We're joined now by Arseniy Yatsenyuk, who's the former Prime Minister of Ukraine. He joins us now. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. I was just looking at your Twitter account, or your X account, and you said today that we have reached what you said was, quote, an important and long-awaited turning point in this conflict. Why did you say that?
Well, you remember, well, first of all, thanks for having me. My pleasure to address your audience. That's for the first time. The second issue is that you remember that President Trump made a verbal U-turn when he posted on his true social media that Ukraine could regain its territorial independence completely with the support of the European Union and NATO. And let me remind you that the United States is a dominant player in NATO. So it was a kind of verbal U-turn. This time, President Trump made an action U-turn. So he clearly decided, and he has realized, that Putin played President Trump in Anchorage. During that doomed meeting with the red carpet and limo sharing in Alaska in Anchorage. So President of the United States acted in a good faith. He expected to get real concessions out of the designated war criminal Putin. So he was very generous. That's what I know for sure, because a few days ago I came back from DC. He was very generous in offering quite comprehensive menu to Russians how to cut the deal. But what happened in the end? Putin just rejected his deal, and Putin wanted to humiliate the President of the United States. So his decision to turn the screw on Russia clearly shows that the US administration realized that Russia is dragging its feet, that Russia is not eager to cut any kind of real peace deal, that Russia hasn't changed its ultimate goal. It is to take over Ukraine, to fragment and to undermine the European Union and NATO, and that Russia, together with China, and I want to be very clear, together with China, because China is a crucial player in this war too, because China is an accomplice to Russia, want to reshape the global order and the global world. That's my reading of the situation.
Okay, and what President Trump has done is to impose sanctions on Russia's two largest oil companies. I'm talking about Rosneft and Lukoil. Now, the Kremlin is saying Russia is, quote, immune to sanctions. And I want to just ask your opinion, though. What do you think the impact of these new sanctions is going to be on the Russian economy?
Well, if one believes that the sanction is a silver bullet or a magic wand, so it's a kind of wishful thinking. Sanctions is just a piece of the puzzle, sir. Piece of the puzzle how to bring peace, a fair and just peace in Europe, and how to defend sovereignty and independence of Ukraine, and how to defend the values of the free world. You're absolutely right saying that the US administration imposed sanctions against two dominant oil crude producers, Rosneft and Lukoil. But the US administration imposed sanctions on all subsidiaries of these units, of these two legal entities. So it is a quite bold action on the side of the US administration to deprive Russia of its revenues from hydrocarbons. Where the problem where I see is that Russia managed, and that's true, partly managed to circumvent sanctions. There are two biggest consumers of the Russian oil, which is China and India. China is paying in renminbi, which is far from the control of the Federal Reserve. The same goes with India. It means that the US administration has to undertake the next step, which is to impose secondary sanctions on those who try to circumvent sanctions and to pay for the Russian oil and gas in different currency rather than the US dollar or euro, because I expect that Europeans will follow suit, and Europeans will definitely impose similar types of sanctions on the Russian energy sector.
Yeah, I mean, the Europeans have, in fact, announced a 19th package of sanctions on Russia. We'll talk about those in just a moment. But I wanted to ask you before that whether you think the effect of these sanctions on those two large oil providers is going to be to get Moscow to come to the negotiating table and in good faith. Do you think that will be the outcome?
Well, with all due respect, sir, I never believed in any kind of good faith in Russia because they don't have this faith. And they never had it. The idea is just to deprive Russia of its financing of the war chest. The idea is to exhaust Russia. The idea is to drain its resources. The idea is to limit Russians' ability to kill Ukrainians because they are literally just killing us, okay? 2 days ago, they launched a barrage of missiles and drones, more than 400 missiles and drones. They hit the kindergarten. They killed 2 kids of 6 months and 12 years old. And this is a never-ending, horrible drama and tragedy. So the US administration decided to laser focus these sanctions on the hydrocarbons. Look at the Russian so-called stock market. These two companies, I mean Rosneft and Lukoil, they lost about 12 billion in capitalization in just 1 day. So Russian stocks are in nosediving. So I do understand that they will try to mitigate this happen. But the thing is that if these sanctions are combined with the similar steps against the new so-called Russian Black Sea Fleet, because the Russian Black Sea Fleet right now rests on the seabed, because we actually sank practically the half of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. But there is a new shadow fleet of Russian that illegally transports crude oil all over the world. These sanctions will be effective. Once again, it is not a silver bullet, but it is a very important step on the side of the US administration, where President Trump, for the first time during his second term, showed that he can bring peace through threats. And he showed and exhibited these strengths.
Before we address that question, I was alluding to the latest package of EU sanctions, their 19th package. I mean, that's an extraordinary number of rafts of sanctions against Russia. I mean, we do hear from President Zelensky sometimes words to the effect that he thinks certain countries need to do more in order to pressure Russia. Which countries do you think he has in mind? Which countries would you like to see ramping up the pressure on Russia?
Well, definitely you should ask President Zelensky, but we are on the same page with the president because, look, I mean, Ukrainians, we are fighting for ourselves, but we are defending an entire world because it's not just unacceptable, it is an egregious crime. What Russia did against Ukraine, this is the biggest military conflict. This is the biggest war after the World War II. So the beacon of democracy is, I still believe, is still the United States. The most prominent and the strongest and staunch supporters of Ukraine are in the European Union. The United Kingdom is just amazing. So they are straight to the point. There is no hot air on the side of the United Kingdom, but just clear-cut deliverables. I wish everyone to realize that they are not just donating to Ukraine. They are investing in their own security, because we as Ukrainians are paying the highest price. This is the price of the human beings, of the lives of the human beings. And there is no way to offset this price, just no way. And in terms of financial support to Ukraine, this is the best ever investment into the national security of NATO member states, and not only NATO member states, those who doesn't want to have wars and conflict all over the world. And if Ukraine wins, and I hope Ukraine will win, this would be the best lesson to those who want to conquer another countries, for those who want to invade and kill independent states and sovereign nations. And they will draw the best lesson that if you commit an act of aggression, you're going to pay for this. And this is my message to everyone. And you are the state-owned channel. And look, I commend the efforts of Riyadh and your country playing a role as a mediator. And we do really appreciate your efforts. You are the dominant player on the oil market. So I hope that your government and your country on the right side of the history.
So what do you say to those Americans who say, sometimes we hear people, even in the current administration, this is not our national security issue, it's not a priority for us as Americans, we're going to pull the plug on funding for this war. What's your message to people who think along those lines?
This is the exact message that I delivered in DC last week on a number of media outlets. I said, look, this is the best ever investment you had. Due to the fact that you contributed to your own security and provided both financial and military support to Ukraine, Ukrainian military managed to degrade severely by half Russian land forces. We compromised Russian intelligence. We compromised Russian cybersecurity. We sunk the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Russia faced casualties of around 1 million people. Could you imagine? Without any kind of military boots on the ground, I mean, either American or anybody else. And the second part of this message is that it's not just Russia. It is China. It is China that helps Russia, that provides financial resources to Russia, that has thrown a lifeline to Russia, that is an accomplice to this kind of egregious crime that Russia committed in Ukraine, and the China that wants to reshape the global order. And if we fail, this would trigger the domino effect all over the world. China is going after you, my dear American friends. And we, as Ukrainians, are on the front lines in defending the values of the free world. This is my message, and I want to reiterate it once again, because this is the truth. And they do understand. Look at the approval ratings. Look at the latest survey, public survey that had been published a few days ago. More than 70% of both Republicans and Democrats support Ukraine. And could you imagine that more Republicans support an idea to turn the screw on Russia rather than Democrats? Look at the bipartisan support in the US Senate. 85 senators co-sponsored the bill to impose secondary sanctions on Russia. So Americans do understand and realize that Russia and China pose a national security threat to their own interests, and that Ukraine's fight is actually the solution, how to defend not only Ukraine, but how to defend and protect the homeland of the United States.
Now, you've mentioned on more than one occasion that you were in Washington last week, and so was President Zelensky. And President Zelensky held talks with President Trump at the White House. I mean, it's extraordinary when we look at what's happened since those talks took place. Budapest meeting has been cancelled. These latest sanctions have been announced, and it's only Thursday, less than a week since those talks took place. What can you tell us about what happened in those talks? Do you have any insights as to what the nature of the conversation was and how it went?
Putin applied the same case scenario, the same pattern that he did before the Anchorage. You remember that he reached out to President Trump. They agreed on this summit in Alaska. President Trump expected to cut the deal. In the end, he played President Trump. The state dinner was canceled, and it went in a kind of debacle. So as designated war criminal, Putin realized that the US administration practically passed the decision to provide Ukraine with the long-range capabilities, I mean Tomahawk missiles. He urgently picked up the phone, so-called red line, and tried to reach out to President Trump, which he did. And he actually managed to convince President Trump to have another Anchorage, but only in Budapest. Just to tell your viewers, Budapest has a very notorious history for Ukrainians. In 1994, Ukraine relinquished its third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. under the Budapest Memorandum, and Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom provided the security guarantees or security assurances to Ukraine that nobody under any circumstances would invade Ukraine. So in the end, Russia, that actually co-sponsored the Budapest Memorandum, invaded Ukraine, that voluntarily relinquished its said biggest arsenal. The idea that Putin had, that he wanted to have another anchorage. But President Trump realized that there is no way, just no way. If Putin accepts his peace proposal, and his peace proposal was very clear, is an unconditional ceasefire, so he can get the Budapest. Otherwise, it's going to be another round of humiliation of the President of the United States. So the President assigned a Secretary of State, who is a seasoned politician, to hold talks with contemporary Ribbentrop. This is the Foreign Minister of Russia, Lavrov. In the end, Americans realized that it's another sham. It is another a kind of pretension. It is another way how to drag their feet and how to play the US administration, that there will be no deliverables. So they are just playing for time. And that's the reason why the meeting in Budapest was cancelled.
It sounds like
the US administration realized that they have to pass the decision to impose a new round of sanctions.
Okay, so it sounds like you found the whole idea of Budapest insulting for reasons that you gave, historical reasons. And I want to just ask you whether you think, I mean, there has been talk in the recent months of President Zelensky having to sit down at a table opposite President Putin. Do you think that is something that is inevitable? Do you think that will happen at some stage?
Look, it's a kind of, wishful thinking. I never believed in this. And you remember that after Alaska meeting, there was even an announcement that they're going to hold either trilateral or bilateral talks, trilateral between my president, President Trump, and suspected war criminal, or bilateral between my president and Russia. Look, it's no way. It's no starter. Look what's happening on the ground. I don't believe in any kind of hotel. I believe only in facts and what's happening on the ground. Russia is not eager to cut any kind of deal. So that's the reason why we need to pressure like hell on Russia, period.
Just tell us a bit more about what's happening on the ground. You've painted a picture for us of what the situation is like right now. I mean, obviously the fighting's continuing, winter is approaching, and that's usually a time when not much happens on the battlefield in the cold winter months. There have obviously been airstrikes on Kyiv in the last 24 hours. Just tell us, what is the current situation on the battlefield as you understand it?
Sir, it is a war. And that's the description of what's happening. With the atrocities committed by the Russian military, with the killing, rape, abduction of Ukrainian children, with the hitting of Ukrainian energy facilities, with the war crimes, it is a war. This war has been going on for 11 years. Because maybe not every viewer of your distinguished channel really knows that this is going on for 11 years. Russia illegally annexed Crimea in 2014, the day I was sworn in as a Prime Minister of Ukraine. And at that particular period of time, we had no army, no cash, no military, no police, nothing, because the pro-Russian president fled the country. And under that circumstances, we managed to survive 11 years ago. In my treasury, in the state treasury of Ukraine, I had 10,000 euros. Could you imagine? For the entire country. The reason why I'm telling you this is that we managed to withstand armed to the teeth Russia for 11 years. An all-out war has been waged by Russia 3.5 years ago. So he wanted to freeze us. He imposed blackouts during the first winter, and he's going to repeat the same case scenario that winter. We will survive. We will survive. Not without losses, And look, it's a hard toil. It is a hard toil, just trust me. You can't even imagine what's being practically every single day, either in the parking lot or in the underground cellar or just nowhere, listening to the noise of drones or missiles. But Ukrainian people showed a very strong resilience. We really have stamina. We will survive and we will win this fight. What is needed? Help. Help us to win the war in order to defend you. Thank you, sir.
Just lastly, before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, obviously, some key events in the last few days, the ones that we discussed at the beginning of this conversation that you yourself described as being a turning point in this conflict. What impact has that had, do you think, on morale in Ukraine?
You mean this U-turn of the US administration?
Yes, and the sanctions.
It is a good move. We strongly welcome this kind of decision. We need real allies. And these allies have a back of Ukraine. So we need real deliverables. So it definitely will help Ukraine to win the war. Whether it's enough, look, sir, it is the war. Everything is needed in order to win the war. But it is a good leverage, and this is the first step of the US administration under President Trump in his second term that clearly shows that Americans are serious about defending Ukraine and helping Ukraine to get a fair and durable peace. At least I believe in this.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you taking the time to speak to Al Arabiya English. Arseniy Yatsenyuk, former Prime Minister of Ukraine, thank you very much indeed for your time, sir.